Ahoy hoy! So something different again. Choosing a good keyboard for coding is important, like really important, especially if you're developing something and spend long hours doing nothing but writing code. But how do you choose a good keyboard? You can check out a bunch of reviews, but since you're here, let me help you make this decision. It's a very important decision, and who else should you trust? Now, before we get into this, you might be wondering why you should be listening to me. It might be true that I'm not a keyboard expert and I'm only a mediocre coder, but I do write a lot. Like, for my job, I write content. I do an average of about 8,000 words a day, most days a week. So, trust me, I've had to deal with all the sore fingers and repetitive strain injuries and carpal tunnel pain and all that kind of thing. And because of that, I've gone through a bunch of different keyboard setups in my time trying to figure out what the best keyboard arrangement and everything else, but we're only focusing on keyboards in this video. Incidentally, if you are suffering from pain when typing, see a doctor, or at least someone with medical smarts. Don't be looking at my channel for clues on how to fix your medical problems. So, mechanical keyboards, let's start there, because I know you were probably expecting this. I know a lot of people don't use mechanical keyboards, and they roll their eyes anytime anyone who does use mechanical keyboards brings it up. So let's get this out of the way. Since I switched to mechanical keyboards, anytime I have to use like a rubber dome or a chiclet keyboard, it's exhausting. Like, my hands feel like they have to work twice as hard, the keys feel gummy and horrible, and yes, it doesn't sound as nice, but that's obviously not as important. Mechanical keyboards have a reputation for being expensive, but here I have a mechanical keyboard and a rubber dome keyboard, and the mechanical one cost half the price of this rubber dome keyboard. Admittedly, it's a Corsair keyboard and a brandless mechanical keyboard, but the point is, the mechanical one still feels a lot nicer. If you absolutely refuse to go mechanical, in my personal opinion, the low-profile chiclet-style keys, like those that you get on like Apple keyboards or on laptops, are far more comfortable to type on over long duration than rubber dome keyboards. However, if you are going to go mechanical keyboards, there is a little matter of key switches to attend to. Now, there's a gazillion switches out there to choose from, and I'm not a keyboard channel, so I'm not going to even attempt to cover a large quantity of them. I'm just going to keep it super basic. You've got your Cherry MX Reds or equivalents, which are basically a gaming switch. You've got your Cherry MX Blue or equivalents, which is like a typist switch. And then you've got Cherry MX Browns or equivalent, which is kind of a middle ground between the two. My advice would be to stay away from the gaming key switches, like the Cherry MX Reds or their equivalents, unless you're like a professional gamer or a highly competitive gamer, because the advantages you get from it, it's kind of like a professional tennis player switching to a racket that's 3 grams lighter. There is an advantage, but you have to be really good to take advantage of it. So my advice would be to stay away from the gaming switches unless you're super competitive, because it's not going to make much difference how quickly you get beaten. Pub overnight, whatever. But stiffer switches make it so much more comfortable to type with. But as most people don't have different keyboards for all occasions, brown switches or the equivalent would be my recommendation for most of us, because I know if you're making games, the chances are you're probably playing games at some point. Many of you may be like me and hardly ever play games these days because you're either working or coding, but still, if you are going to be playing games, I would say, and you can't afford to have like more than one keyboard, I would say go for a nice mechanical keyboard with brown switches, because it makes a nice middle ground. And for the nerds out there who might be wondering, I have Cherry MX Browns in the keyboard that I use for coding and gaming, and Gateron Blue switches for optical switches, mind, for the keyboard that I use for work, where I do all the typing on. Now, there's several keyboard sizes. I'm just going to focus on the most common ones. So you've got your full-size keyboard, which is, you know, like what we're looking at here. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's all the keys, and you've got these in the middle, and you've got your number pad, and all your function keys are all separate. Then we have a 10 keyless keyboard, which I don't have an example to show you here, but basically, if you imagine this keyboard that we're looking at minus the number pad, that's the 10 keyless keyboard. And then after that, it pretty much just drops into percentages. So you've got a 75% keyboard, a 65% keyboard, a 40% keyboard. And then there's even more complicated options, because you can get like a 65% keyboard where the keys are all mushed together and there's no gaps between them. And you can get a 65% keyboard where there's spaces between like the arrow keys and the home keys and all that kind of thing, and the rest of the keys. So let's start with an easy one. I strongly recommend avoiding keyboards that don't have your operators and other common symbols in easy to reach places. Now, you might look at a 60% board or even a 40% board and think that all the symbols are there like they would be on a full-size keyboard, and you'd mostly be right. Mostly. There's one particular key that is a problem key, and that is the pipe symbol or the vertical line, which is this one here. You press shift and you press that, and that's your vertical line. Now, for the smaller keyboard, you know what? It'd be easier if I just showed you. 1 second. So for these kind of keyboards, the pipe symbol is up here, but you can't actually, let's just take that off there, but you can't actually just press like shift and that, or like that, or you have to do sort of a claw, shift, alt, FN, enter, T, Q. It's not as complicated as I'm making it look, but the point is it's not easy. And when you're doing something like code where you might be writing an OR operator every 5th line or something silly, it gets tedious real quick. And there's other symbols that aren't quite as easy to get to. And like for me, for typing, being able to do M- is an important one. So I have to use like Alt 0151 to get the M- because there's no key for that. So unless you're happy to remap keys, or you want to set up some macros or get a separate macro pad for that matter, I would stay away from the really small keyboards for coding. In my personal opinion, 10 keyless is about as small as you want to go for coding, because you want to have them symbols all nice and easy to reach. Again, this is all my preference. If you're already an accomplished coder and you have your favorite keyboard and it is a 40% chocolate bar, then you know, more power to you. This is just my opinion. So the keys, this is purely aesthetic. Go with whatever you want. Personally, I find the DSA profile keycaps the most comfortable. These are the kind of square caps that we just saw on the 40% keyboard. That they're all the same shape, and I'm doing a terrible job with the lighting on this video. This is why I don't have cameras in my videos normally. So yeah, they're all the same shape, all the same profile, and they've got a slight dish in them. Obviously these are a different shape, but it's the same profile and everything. That's my personal preference, but there's like these here are the most common type, which you'll find on most keyboards that you buy these days, that are, well, obviously other than chiclet keyboards, and these are called OEM profile. And OEM's probably what you're going to find on pretty much any keyboard you buy, unless you explicitly look for one that doesn't have OEM. And on a side note on keycaps and the previous conversation about finding symbols and stuff, resist the urge to try and flex your finger skills with a blank keycap set. Now, I type a lot, and I still take several attempts to find the at bar or the vertical symbol bar or everything on. Be right back, I need to get another keyboard. Okay, I just brought all the keyboards with me this time, so I don't have to get up again. So yeah, this monstrosity here, which looks, in my opinion, looks very damn cool. And it's fun to type on. It's got DSA keycaps, as you can see. It sounds nice. It's got, incidentally, this has got brown switches in it. It's a very cheap keyboard, this Magic Force, whatever the hell it was. I can't remember the model number. It's a very cheap keyboard, but like these blank keycaps, even with all the typing that I do, I still struggle sometimes when I need to find like one of the symbols. It's, I mean, obviously I don't turn into a hunt and pecker and like really struggle, but like when you're in the flow, when you're coding, you'll know, you know, it's horrible to have to break your flow and look for a symbol. So yeah, I would say, unless you are a better typist than me, avoid this kind of keycap for your coding keyboard. Now, the price. Keyboards, like everything in the world, suffer from sort of diminishing returns when you get into the high price ranges, by which I mean there is a world of difference between like a $12.99 keyboard that you might get on Amazon, like this bad boy. Oh, feel that flex. It's horrible. And like a 50 quid mechanical keyboard. This is a million times nicer to type on than that plastic monstrosity that I just held up. However, when you get up above 150 quid, or I guess that would be like $200, or, you know, convert for your local currency, once you get above that sort of price, there really isn't that big a difference. We're getting back into that, what I was talking about before, about the professional tennis players and the grams of difference in the tennis racket weight. Yes, there's an advantage to be had, but you have to be really good at what you do to notice it. And to be like, I type all the time, and for me, it's not quite worth getting a £300 keyboard yet for the functional advantages that you get. Like, it's slightly nicer to type on, it sounds nicer, but the main advantage is it looks nicer. So I would say, unless you want to dive into the keyboard fetish realm, I would probably stay under £100 with your keyboard. This, incidentally, this Corsair keyboard that I've had in front of me for most of the video, I believe this was about £100. But this, by the same brand, is a rubber dome keyboard. Same, you know, Corsair. It's a gaming keyboard. It's meant for gaming. However, this one is not mechanical, and again, it's gummy. Sounds rubbish. It's just not nice to type on. So I would stay under the £100 mark, unless, like, say you really need that super sweet looking like Leaf 65 or something. But definitely go mechanical and stay clear of anything that you can do this with. So, final note before I wrap this up, protect your body. I've seen some real horror shows when it comes to how people sit at their desks when they type. It might not affect you in small bursts, but if you type anywhere near as much as I do, you will really start to notice problem areas. There's all sorts of advice for posture and stuff, but I'm going to try and oversimplify it. Sit up straight. Have your feet flat on the ground and your your legs out straight. Set your chair up so that your forearms are parallel with the ground, not like going upwards or going downwards, parallel with the ground, and your elbows should be a right angle. So essentially the top part of your arm should be going straight down, and the second, that part of your arm should be going straight across. And then also have your screen high enough that you're not craning your neck upwards or downwards. Upwards or downwards. So that's the end of that video. I hope it was useful, something a little bit different, and all that's left to do now is to thank my amazing Patreons. As always, all the Patreons get a thanks, but the special thanks go to my Sugar Daddy / Mama tier supporters, who are Dave Maldine, Reg Reed, Gabriel White, Aaron Clark, Mr. Drunken Dragon, and Julian. And that is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed something a little different, hope you found it useful, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!